The morning sun had barely broken through the mist that hung over Seattle, painting the skyline in silver. Inside a quiet courthouse near Pioneer Square, Catherine Rogers stood in front of a judge she didn't know, beside a man she once thought she might love. The room smelled faintly of paper and rain, the kind of scent Seattle carried like a secret. "Do you, Catherine Rogers, agree to enter this union of your own free will?" the judge asked. Her answer was steady practiced. "I do." Across from her, Peter Wilson, the man with the famous last name and the not-so-famous fortune, gave a charming but hollow smile. His suit was perfect. His tone was polite. His eyes were somewhere else. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, no one clapped. No one cried. The only sound was the click of a pen signing what both of them already knew. This was a contract, not a marriage. Peter's family, the Wilsons of Bellevue, had been pillars of high society for generations. Old money, old rules. But recently, the family business had been falling apart faster than their reputation. And Catherine, she was the quiet miracle everyone forgot to thank. A designer who built her own small fashion studio downtown, she wasn't born into wealth, but she had taste, discipline, and a kind heart. When Peter's parents fell ill years ago, she helped care for them as if they were her own. They'd once said, "If we ever had a daughter, we'd want her to be like you." So when they passed away, and Peter came to her with an offer of marriage of convenience to save the Wilson name, she said yes. Not because she loved him, because she owed them. The first weeks were quiet. They lived in a large house that looked like it had been designed for happiness, but never used it. 2 coffee cups sat on the counter each morning, one untouched. 2 sets of keys by the door, one never moved. Catherine filled her days with work and silence. She made sketches, sipped cold coffee, watched the rain slide down the window. Peter, meanwhile, disappeared into meetings and late dinners, always with an excuse that sounded too smooth to question. She never asked where he went. He never asked if she was lonely. One night, she stood on the balcony, phone in hand, staring at a message she'd written but never sent. When did we stop pretending to care? She deleted it. Seattle's wind bit through her thin sweater. She thought of her parents, how they once told her that love was a choice, not a miracle. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But kindness, she'd learned, didn't make someone stay. Sometimes it just made you easier to leave. At breakfast the next morning, Peter walked in, scrolling through his phone. "Flight to New York tonight," he said, not looking up. "Company meeting, could be a week." "Of course," she replied. "I'll handle the press release for the charity gala." "Right, do that." He paused, glancing at her like he was remembering something. "You've been good through all this." "Good." The word stung. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt heavier than before. She looked down at her wedding ring, simple, silver cold. It didn't sparkle. It didn't mean anything. That evening, Catherine went back to her studio. The city outside buzzed with lights and strangers chasing dreams. She turned on soft music, opened her sketchbook, and began drawing. A silhouette formed a woman in a black dress, standing in the rain chin, lifted eyes dry. A woman who'd stopped begging to be seen. She whispered to herself, "You can't humiliate me if I refuse to play your game." The words felt stronger than they sounded. Later that night, she received a text from an unknown number. "You've been invited to the Hartford Foundation Gala next week. Formal attire required." No name, no signature. She frowned. The Hartfords, one of Seattle's wealthiest families, never sent random invitations. Peter's company was tied to them somehow, but she hadn't met anyone from that circle. Still, something inside her, maybe instinct, maybe defiance, told her to go. She saved the date, closed the message, and for the first time in months smiled faintly to herself. Whatever this was, it felt like the beginning of a shift, not in the weather, but in her story. The morning sky over Seattle-Tacoma Airport was heavy with rain clouds when Catherine Rogers pulled into the parking lot. The wipers swept across the windshield like a metronome, steady and cold. She hated airports, all those tearful goodbyes, all those fake welcomes. But today, she was here for her husband. Peter Wilson's flight from New York had just landed. The tabloids had been whispering for weeks about his business expansion trips. Catherine never believed rumors until now, when even silence felt suspicious. She stepped out, tightening her beige coat, holding the car keys like armor. The automatic doors hissed open. People poured out, families, lover suits, with phones glued to their ears. And then she saw him. Peter. He looked effortlessly polished. As always, navy coat clean cut that practiced charm, that fooled cameras and shareholders alike. But he wasn't alone. A young woman clung to his arm, her head on his shoulder. She was striking long blonde hair, bright smile, and confidence that came from knowing you'd already won. Catherine froze mid-step. The woman's laughter echoed through the terminal before she spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thanks for picking us up, Catherine." Catherine's voice barely left her lips. The woman's hand drifted protectively to her stomach. "Didn't Peter tell you I'm Amy? And I'm pregnant." The words hit like a car crash, silent, violent, irreversible. Peter's jaw tightened. "Amy, that's enough." But Amy wasn't done. "Oh, Catherine, you're just the contract wife. I'm the real deal, the one carrying his future." The surrounding noise dimmed. A man filming nearby lowered his phone, realizing he'd just caught something worth millions of views. Catherine's throat burned, but her expression didn't break. "You're pregnant with his child," she said quietly. "Not mine." Amy blinked, thrown off by the calm. Peter sighed, stepping forward. "Catherine, this isn't—" "Don't," she interrupted. "I agreed to this marriage because your parents once showed me kindness, but clearly they raised a stranger." He opened his mouth to respond, but she had already turned away. The heels of her boots clicked against the polished floor, sharp, deliberate, echoing louder than any apology he could have made. Outside, the air was sharp with winter. Catherine gripped the steering wheel so tight, her knuckles turned white. Her reflection in the mirror looked foreign, calm, distant, but trembling inside. Rain streaked across the windshield like 1,000 unsent tears. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number again. "Don't let them see you bleed." She didn't recognize the number, but somehow it steadied her. By the next morning, the gossip had spread faster than Seattle's fog. Wilson & Co. The family empire was trending not for its finances, but for its scandal. Hashtag contract wife. Hashtag Wilson affair. Reporters swarmed the Wilson residence like seagulls over the harbor. Catherine didn't step outside. She didn't need to. The noise couldn't reach her where she'd already gone numb. She spent the day in her studio pretending the world didn't exist. Sketching, erasing, sketching again. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. By nightfall, she finally looked at her wedding photo, the one where Peter smiled like he meant it. She traced a finger over the image, then flipped the frame face down. "You can't humiliate me if I refuse to play your game," she whispered. 2 days later, Peter showed up unannounced. The sound of his car tires crunching the gravel outside her studio made her chest tighten. When he stepped in, his coat was soaked, but his arrogance stayed perfectly dry. "You've seen the news," he said. "I can fix this if you cooperate." Catherine looked up from her sketchpad. "Cooperate? Smile for the cameras at the Hartford gala next week. Show them we're fine. The board is nervous. My mother's foundation is watching. We just need a few photos. Play your role one last time." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "One last time. After that, we'll make it official, quietly. You'll get the house, the car, whatever you want." Her voice was low but sharp. "I don't want anything from you, Peter. I just want my dignity back." He hesitated, as if dignity were a currency he'd never learned to trade. "Catherine, don't make this harder than it has to be." "I won't. I'll be there." "Good." He left without noticing the tears she refused to let fall. That night, Catherine stood by the window, watching the lights of downtown Seattle blink in the distance. The invitation to the Hartford Foundation Gala sat on her table, the same mysterious one from before. Now she understood. Peter needed her there. The public needed to see a united front. But maybe she could use that spotlight for herself. A slow, dangerous calm replaced the ache in her chest. Whatever the gala brought, she'd walk into it, not as the broken wife of Peter Wilson, but as Catherine Rogers, the woman he underestimated. 3 days after the airport scandal, Seattle seemed to breathe differently. Every coffee shop, every newsstand, every gossip site was whispering the same name, Catherine Rogers, the contract wife, the woman who'd been humiliated in public. And yet she hadn't said a single word. Inside her small design studio on the edge of Capitol Hill, Catherine stitched the hem of a black evening gown. Her hands moved with precision, but her thoughts were miles away, back to that airport, that crowd, that moment when her life became a headline. The radio played faintly in the background. A news host's voice cut through the static. "Rumor has it, Catherine Rogers will still attend the Hartford Foundation Gala this weekend, alongside her husband, Peter Wilson, and his new companion." Catherine exhaled, a humorless smile forming. Of course Peter wanted her there, to fix his image, to prove the contract wife still played by the rules. But what he didn't know was that she had her own reasons for going. That night, she opened the closet. Dozens of dresses hung there, expensive, lifeless, chosen by Peter's mother before she passed. None of them felt like her. She stared at the sketch pinned to her wall, a design she'd drawn the night she received the anonymous text, "Don't let them see you bleed." A black silk gown, clean lines slit on the side, bold, but not loud. Power wrapped in simplicity. Catherine smiled faintly, "Then let them see me shine." The evening of the gala arrived fast. The rain had stopped, but the city lights shimmered across puddles on the street. Catherine's driver opened the car door outside the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, where the Hartford Foundation hosted its annual charity event. Photographers crowded the entrance. Flashbulbs sparked like lightning. When Catherine stepped out, the crowd went silent. She wasn't the broken wife the headlines had painted. She was grace and armor. Her gown flowed like midnight. The look in her eyes dared anyone to pity her. One reporter shouted, "Mrs. Wilson, is it true your husband fathered another woman's child?" She paused, lips curving into a polite smile. "You'll have to ask him. He's the one who loves attention." Click. The photo hit the front page before the night even ended. Inside the ballroom glowed with chandeliers and soft jazz. Seattle's richest moved through the crowd, pretending their lives were perfect. Catherine walked among them like she'd never been burned. At the center of the room, Peter and Amy stood together, performing for cameras. Amy wore shimmering silver, the kind of dress that begged to be noticed. When Peter spotted Catherine, his practiced smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for Amy to notice. "Catherine, you made it," Peter said, his tone rehearsed. "Of course," she replied. "You asked me to play my part." Amy's lips twitched. That dress, bold choice for someone who hates the spotlight. Catherine turned her gaze sharp but calm. "You'd be surprised how much light black can handle." The line hit harder than champagne. Several nearby guests tried to hide their laughter. Peter's jaw clenched. "Behave, Catherine," he whispered. She leaned in just enough for him to hear. "Be a good boy, Peter. And leash your pet." Across the room, the Hartford family mingled with business leaders. Catherine caught glimpses of them, but one man standing near the balcony drew her attention. He wasn't talking, just watching the crowd, a glass of bourbon in hand. Dark hair, tailored suit eyes that didn't belong to this glittering world. When his gaze met hers, the noise around them faded. For a second, she couldn't breathe. Something about him felt familiar, unsettlingly familiar. But before she could place it, Amy tugged Peter toward the dance floor, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let's show them what real love looks like." Catherine turned away, jaw tightening, forcing herself to stay composed. An older man from the Hartford board approached her, polite but curious. "Mrs. Wilson, pleasure to meet you. You look radiant tonight. Will your husband be discussing the new investment proposal?" Her smile didn't waver. "You'll have to ask him. I'm just here to enjoy the music." But her eyes drifted back toward the balcony, where the stranger still stood, now watching her, one brow raised like he knew something she didn't. And for the first time in months, Catherine felt something spark inside her chest. Not love, not yet, but something alive. As the orchestra played another slow tune, she whispered to herself, "You can't humiliate me if I refuse to play your game." But deep down, a quiet question lingered. What if the game was about to change? The Hartford Gala was in full swing. The air inside the Fairmont Olympic Ballroom shimmered with gold light and murmured ambition. Champagne glasses clinked laughter, rose in elegant waves, and somewhere in the background, a jazz trio played a soft rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon." Catherine Rogers had always hated parties like this, all glitter, no warmth. But tonight, she wasn't here to hide. She was here to be seen. From across the room, she caught her reflection in one of the tall mirrors. A woman in black silk stood there, composed, unreadable, impossible to humiliate. She barely recognized the person staring back. And then she saw him again. The man from the balcony. He hadn't moved much since she first noticed him, still standing by the edge of the crowd, watching with quiet detachment. Dark hair, tailored navy suit posture, relaxed but confident. He looked out of place, as though he didn't need to impress anyone. When their eyes met, it felt like the music dropped a beat. He started walking toward her, cutting through the crowd with a calm certainty that made everyone step aside without knowing why. By the time he reached her, the distance between them felt electric. "You really don't remember me, do you?" he said, voice low and steady. Catherine blinked, caught off guard by the familiarity in his tone. "Should I?" He smiled, not the rehearsed social kind, but something real. "We met once. You were wearing a red dress, sitting alone in a bar downtown. You said you hated pretending to be someone else." Her breath caught. She remembered that night a year ago before her marriage, before everything went cold. She'd gone to that bar after signing the first draft of the marriage contract. Angry, drunk on disappointment. She'd met a man who called himself Adam. She thought he was just a stranger, charming broke too good-looking for his own good. They'd talked for hours. He'd made her laugh when she'd forgotten how. And when she left, she never expected to see him again. "Adam," she whispered. "Still me," he said softly, lifting his glass. "You said I looked like trouble." "You were right," she replied. "And yet you still gave me your number," he said with a grin, then changed it 2 weeks later. She chuckled a sound she hadn't heard from herself in months. "You really kept my number." "I kept the memory." Her smile faded into disbelief. "What are you doing here?" He tilted his head, almost teasing. "I could ask you the same thing, Mrs. Wilson." The title hit like a cold wind. "You know," she asked quietly, "Seattle's a small town when you have money," he said, his voice cooling. "Everyone knows. The contract marriage, the scandal, the airport." She straightened her shoulders mask, sliding back into place. "Then you must know why I'm here. Peter wanted me to play the perfect wife one last time." Adam's gaze softened. "And you agreed." "I'm not here for him," she said, her tone sharp but honest. "I'm here for me." Before he could respond, a wave of laughter erupted from the dance floor. Peter and Amy were performing for the cameras, spinning too close, smiling too wide, playing the part of true love for every flashbulb in the room. Catherine felt the eyes of the crowd shift toward her, waiting, judging, hungry for reaction. She didn't give them one. She lifted her glass, took a sip, and smiled faintly as if the world no longer had claws. "You really don't care what they think, do you?" Adam asked. "I used to," she said. "Now I just care who I become after they stop watching." He nodded slowly, admiration flickering in his expression. "You've changed." "So have you," she said, studying him. "Back then, you said you worked freelance, small-time consulting. Remember?" His grin turned quiet, almost private. "I still do consulting, just on a larger scale." "How large?" He leaned in slightly, his voice brushing against her ear. "Let's just say the Hartford Foundation isn't just hosting me tonight. It's mine." Catherine froze. "Yours." He smiled, unbothered. "Adam Hartford, CEO. Heir. Whatever title helps people sleep better." Her heart skipped. The billionaire everyone in Seattle gossiped about, the one politicians courted and competitors feared, was the man she'd once mistaken for a bartender between jobs. "You're the same man who still can't stop thinking about the woman in the red dress," he interrupted gently. The air between them thickened with something unsaid. Peter's voice broke it. "Catherine," he snapped from across the room, walking toward them. Amy followed, eyes sharp with jealousy. "What are you doing?" Catherine turned calm as ever, talking. Peter's gaze flicked to Adam and back. "Do you know who this man is?" Adam's tone was mild but unflinching. "She does now." Amy crossed her arms. "Peter, let's go. This isn't worth." "Actually," Adam said, eyes still on Catherine, "it might be." The moment stretched, silent, dangerous, electric. Peter tried to laugh it off. "Catherine, behave yourself. You're embarrassing us." She set her glass down. "No, Peter, you embarrassed yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Adam watched, eyes gleaming not with amusement but respect. As the orchestra swelled, Catherine took a deep breath. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, but her heart lighter than it had been in months. When she finally looked back at Adam, he was smiling again, that same quiet smile from the night they met. "You really haven't changed," she murmured. "I have," he said. "I just learned to hide it better." The music shifted, the lights dimmed, and for the first time since her marriage began, Catherine realized she was no longer the background character in someone else's story. She was the storm, and tonight she had just met her match. Did that moment catch you off guard, too? Tell me where you're listening from. I want to see how far this love story is traveling tonight. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next part, it's where everything changes. The power clash begins now. The crowd at the Hartford Gala hadn't fully recovered from the tension Catherine had just caused. Her words to Peter still lingered in the air like electricity after lightning. "No, Peter, you embarrassed yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you." Now whispers moved through the ballroom, low, delicious, unstoppable. But Catherine didn't care. For the first time in years, she wasn't scared of what people would say. Across the room, Adam Hartford watched her, his expression unreadable. His company name hung over every banner, every donation envelope, every guest who came to feel important. But tonight, all the power in the room was shifting, and not in his hands. It was in hers. Peter tried to save face, tugging Amy closer, whispering something meant to sound reassuring. Amy's smile trembled, the perfect mask cracking. "You shouldn't have said that in front of everyone," Peter hissed under his breath. Catherine turned slightly, her gaze cool. "Then maybe you shouldn't have given them something to talk about." The crowd parted as Mr. Hartford, Adam's father, approached. He was older, white-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who measured respect by lineage and money. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," he greeted formally. "I trust you're enjoying the evening." "Of course," Peter said quickly. "Your event is spectacular, as always." The elder Hartford murmured, "And this must be Mrs. Wilson." Catherine met his gaze and offered her hand, poised and polite. "A pleasure, Mr. Hartford." He studied her for a beat too long. "You have a strong presence, young lady. Not everyone does." "Thank you," she replied. "I suppose strength comes when you stop waiting to be saved." It wasn't meant as a jab, but Adam, watching nearby, caught the meaning and the glimmer of admiration in his father's eyes. Peter, however, turned pale. He knew exactly what that tone meant. Catherine was no longer the quiet wife who stayed in his shadow. Later that evening, Adam found her on the terrace, where city lights spilled across the skyline like gold dust. The chatter and music inside faded into background noise. "You handled him well," Adam said, stepping closer. "Your father?" she asked, sipping her champagne. "Peter," he corrected, "though my father's not easy either." She smiled faintly. "You've been watching me." "I've been trying not to." Her heart skipped, not because of the words, but the honesty in them. "You didn't have to step in earlier," she said. "That's not your fight." Adam leaned against the railing beside her. "It is when someone insults the woman." He stopped himself, choosing his words carefully. "The woman I respect." Catherine looked away, the night air brushing her cheek. "Respect is rare in this room." "Then maybe we should make it the currency," he said softly. She laughed quietly, spoken like a billionaire philosopher, spoken like a man who once worked 3 jobs before becoming one. She turned to face him. "You weren't always a Hartford." He shook his head. "Not until my father needed an heir more than I needed a name." For the first time, Catherine saw the hint of pain behind his calm exterior, the loneliness of someone who had everything yet trusted no one. "You think money keeps people close," he said, "but it just teaches them how to leave politely." She understood that too well. Inside, Peter was spiraling. The attention he once craved now burned. Every guest he greeted seemed to glance past him toward Catherine and Adam. Amy whispered sharply, "They're talking about you." "About her." "Shut up, Amy," Peter muttered. "I can fix this." He spotted a small group of investors, men whose approval he desperately needed, gathered around Adam. Determined, he walked over. "Mr. Hartford," he began, voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I was hoping we could discuss potential investments between Hartford Holdings and Wilson & Co. We're rebuilding the brand. It's a solid opportunity." Adam looked at him evenly, setting down his drink. "Wilson & Co., he repeated. "The same company currently trending for mishandling funds and humiliating its own employees online." Peter flushed. Those were exaggerated reports, temporary setbacks. "Setbacks caused by poor leadership," Adam said simply. "I don't invest in men who can't manage their own house." The crowd went quiet. Cameras turned. Peter forced a laugh. "I suppose you'd prefer my wife handle it then?" Adam's expression didn't change. "Actually, yes." A ripple of shock spread through the room. "Catherine has something you don't," Adam continued. "Credibility, discipline, self-awareness." Peter's jaw clenched. "You don't even know her." Adam stepped forward, voice calm but powerful. "You're right. I don't know everything about her, but I do know what kind of man disrespects his wife in public. And that's enough." Someone gasped. The tension snapped like glass. Amy tugged Peter's sleeve. "Let's just leave." "No," he snapped. "He's trying to humiliate me." Catherine walked over, then her tone quiet but sharp enough to cut through the noise. "No one needs to try, Peter. You've been doing a perfect job yourself." He turned on her, voice rising. "You think this is funny. You think you can stand there." "Yes," she said evenly, "because standing is something you never learn to do." Gasps. Silence. Even the band stopped playing. Peter's fury boiled over. "You'll regret this." Catherine looked at him one last time, not with anger, but pity. "No, Peter, I already did. Now I'm just done." She set her glass down, walked away, and never looked back. Adam followed her outside. The wind carried the faint hum of music and the whispers of stunned guests. "You didn't have to defend me," she said softly. "I didn't do it for you," he replied. "I did it because men like him think no one ever will." Catherine met his gaze steady, searching unfamiliar territory. "You really are impossible to forget," she said. Adam smiled faintly. "Good, because I'm not done proving why." Inside, the gala buzzed with chaos. Outside, under the quiet Seattle night, two people stood at the edge of something neither of them expected: the beginning of power shifting hands, not in business, but in love. The ballroom still buzzed after Catherine left. Cameras had caught every second: Peter's anger, Adam's calm, and the moment Catherine walked away without looking back. By midnight, her name was already trending again. Hashtag the Wife who walked out. But Catherine didn't care. She didn't even check her phone. She just kept walking. Outside, Seattle's winter air wrapped around her like glass. The rain had started again, soft, cold, unrelenting. Streetlights turned every raindrop into silver threads as she stepped onto the curb, still in her black gown heels, clicking against wet pavement. A voice behind her called out, "Catherine, wait." She didn't turn. "You shouldn't be out here," Adam said, catching up, holding his jacket above her head. "I'm fine," she replied. "I needed air." He looked at her, soaked, shivering slightly, eyes bright with something between anger and freedom. "That was brave," he said. "You burned his entire empire with one sentence." She laughed softly, the sound bitter and beautiful all at once. "I didn't burn it. He handed me the match years ago. I just decided to use it." They stood under the awning of the hotel, rain drumming against the glass canopy. The noise filled the silence between them. "You didn't have to defend me," she said finally. "Maybe not," he replied, "but it's been a long time since I saw someone refuse to bow to power, even when it was their own." She looked at him, studying his face in the dim light. The man who once seemed like a mystery now looked disarmingly human, tired, honest, real. "You talk about power like you hate it," she said. "I don't hate power," he answered quietly. "I just hate what people become when they think it's all they have." A car slowed nearby Peter's. The headlights flashed against the rain. Catherine's pulse spiked as she saw him step out, his tie, undone, rage written across his face. Amy trailed behind him, still in her glittering silver dress, mascara streaked down her cheeks. Catherine, Peter shouted, "We're not done." Adam moved subtly, stepping between them. "You should leave," he said firmly. Peter scoffed. "You think you can protect her? You don't even know her." "I know enough," Adam replied, his voice calm but dangerous. Amy tugged at Peter's arm. "Please, just go. This isn't helping." "You," Peter turned on her. "You ruined everything tonight." Amy flinched, tears mixing with rain. Catherine stepped forward, then voice clear and sharp. "Stop yelling at her, Peter. You've hurt enough people for one lifetime." "Stay out of this," he barked. Adam's tone cut through the noise. "You're drunk and you're done." Peter's jaw tightened. "You think this makes you a hero. You're just another rich man trying to buy what he can't earn." Adam didn't flinch. "Maybe. But unlike you, I don't buy people." For a moment, no one moved. The rain fell harder, turning the world gray and electric. Finally, Peter turned to leave, muttering curses under his breath. Amy followed, silent and shaking. When their car disappeared, Catherine exhaled for the first time. "You didn't have to step in," she said again. "You keep saying that," Adam replied. "Maybe it's time you stop assuming people only show up when they want something." Her gaze softened. "I forgot what that felt like." "Then let me remind you," he said. Minutes passed. The rain didn't let up. Catherine laughed, suddenly shaking her head. "You realize I just walked out of a multi-million-dollar gala, ruined my husband's career, and probably ended whatever quiet life I had left." "You didn't ruin anything," Adam said. "You ended something that was already over." He took off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. It was still warm, carrying his scent, cedar rain, and something she couldn't quite name. "You're shaking," he said softly. "I'm fine," she whispered. "It's just, everything feels heavy and light at the same time." That's what freedom feels like. Her eyes met his. "And what does it cost?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Everything you thought you needed." They walked in silence down the block, their steps echoing through the empty street. The city hummed around them, neon reflections rippling across puddles, taxis passing, the faint buzz of life continuing. At a corner cafe closed for the night, Catherine stopped under the awning. "You should go," she said softly. "This isn't your mess." "Maybe not," Adam said, "but it feels like my beginning." She frowned. "You barely know me." "I knew you before you forgot yourself," he said. "The woman in the red dress. She wasn't afraid of anything. I think she's still here." Catherine looked down, her heart caught between disbelief and something dangerously close to hope. "You really don't give up, do you?" "Not on things that matter." She smiled, small, tired, but real. A car honked nearby, splashing water across the curb. She pulled his jacket tighter around her and laughed again. "You know this is absurd. The billionaire and the contract wife standing in the rain, like a bad movie." "Yeah," he said, smiling, "except this time the ending's still being written." The words lingered warm against the cold. She stepped closer, close enough to see the raindrops glisten on his lashes. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "Thank you for being the first man who didn't make me feel small." Adam looked at her, his voice low and certain. "Catherine, you were never small. You just forgot how big your world could be." A flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by soft thunder rolling over the bay. Catherine closed her eyes, letting the rain touch her face. For once, it didn't sting. It felt like starting over. When she opened them again, Adam was still there, steady, quiet, patient. And for the first time in forever, she didn't want to run. The rain finally stopped by morning. Seattle's skyline glowed under a soft gray light, the kind that made the whole city feel like it was holding its breath. Catherine Rogers sat by the window of her small design studio, wrapped in Adam's jacket, sipping coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The night replayed in her mind the confrontation, the chaos, the silence that came after. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like someone's shadow. She felt real. A soft knock came at the door. When she opened it, Adam stood there, casual this time. No tux, no spotlight, no pretense. Just jeans, a gray sweater, and that same steady look in his eyes. "You left this," he said, holding out her clutch bag from last night. "You didn't have to bring it yourself," she said, trying not to smile. "I wanted to." He hesitated, then added quietly, "The news broke this morning. Peter's company stock dropped 20% overnight. The board's removing him." Catherine's expression didn't change much, but her heart felt strangely heavy. "I never wanted to destroy him," she said softly. "I just wanted to stop being his mistake." "You didn't destroy anything," Adam replied. "You just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken." They sat together in silence for a while. The hum of the city filled the space between their words. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "That depends," he said. "What do you want to happen?" She looked out the window. For years, her choices had always been reactions to circumstances, to obligations, to everyone else's version of right. But now, the world felt open again. "I want to build something that's mine," she said. "Something that doesn't depend on anyone's last name." Adam smiled. "Then do it. You don't need my permission." "I wasn't asking for it," she teased lightly. "Good," he said, his grin widening. "Because I'm terrible at saying no to you." A week later, Catherine officially reopened her fashion studio under a new name, Rogers Atelier. The press called it a symbol of quiet rebellion. Orders flooded in not because of pity or scandal, but because her work spoke for itself, timeless, bold, and unapologetically hers. On opening day, a bouquet of white roses arrived with a handwritten note. "For the woman who taught me that love isn't about saving, it's about choosing. A.H." She traced the initials with her finger, her heart softening. Later that evening, she found Adam waiting by the pier near the waterfront, where city lights shimmered on the water like scattered stars. "You found me," she said. "I wasn't looking for you," he replied. "I was waiting." They stood there in quiet understanding, two people who had lost and rebuilt in the same storm. "You could have anyone," she said quietly. "Why me?" Adam's voice was gentle but certain. "Because you're the only one who didn't want what I had you wanted who I am." Catherine felt her throat tighten. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," he said. "It's just worth it." She smiled, eyes glistening in the dim light. "So, what happens to the billionaire and the contract wife?" He looked out toward the horizon. "Maybe they stop being headlines," he said, "and just become two people who finally chose each other." As the wind moved through the bay, Catherine took a deep breath. For once, her life didn't feel like someone else's script. It was hers, imperfect, unpredictable, but honest. She turned to Adam, her voice steady and warm. "No contracts this time." "No," he said, taking her hand. "Just promises I'll fight to keep." The city lights reflected in their eyes as the camera of life slowly pulled back, a quiet ending, not of rescue, but of choice. If this story touched you, tell me where you're listening from. Let's see how far love can travel. And don't forget to hit subscribe because more stories like this are waiting to find you.